Let's put our living stereo stylus in this groove.
Brandon Groce. And we are the Game Changers. Designers, creatives alike. We are in a world that runs on value. Our next designs will be the shiniest. Our next animation will be the most buttery. Ladies and gentlemen, Game Changers, let the games begin. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much for your patience. It has been crazy with the audio. We were fighting to the death on the internet trying to get our audio really where it needs to be. So first off, thank you guys for your patience, and also thank you, Jaslin, for your patience as well. All right, for those of you who are joining in today, you guys know we have an amazing guest, Jaslin Tauntaun, who is going to showcase to us and really teach us how basic typography can be. We're not gonna overcomplicate things. Typography is a weakness of mine, and as many others of you who've also been like, how do we choose our typography? What are the rules? What do we really need to keep in mind to have strong typography and also do really well without having to overcomplicate things? So we're gonna go over that with Jaslin and also talk a little bit about how he's created this beautiful masterpiece that you see before us. Now, before we do get into this, I want to let you guys know that this production is brought to you by Adobe XD, and if you guys really enjoy what we have here today or excited about it, don't forget to hit the like button as well as subscribe if you haven't already. There's the second link down in the description is a survey. If you guys have learned something amazing about Adobe XD, typography, things of that nature, or just learned in general, please feel free, or actually please fill out that survey. It helps tremendously and keep these productions going. All right, without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce the guest of the day, Jaslin Tantan. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Brendan. It's always nice talking to you.
Of course, and thank you for working with me on the audio, man. So,
of course,
for those of you, for those in the audience, and by the way, we want to say hello to everybody. We have Henry, Kyle, Derek, Marie, Excellence, Fergie. We have a whole bunch of the Game Changers and additional family here. Jaslin, introduce yourself to the family. Who are you? What have you done? And what are we going to talk about here today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Jaslin Tantan. Obviously, I don't know if you sharing the screen on that. I have a little slide I put together for that. So I've been in design for a little bit over 10 years, and in that time, I've had the chance to work with a slew of companies. Recently, done some work for the likes of Visa, Amazon, Hotels.com, and bunch of others, just to name a few. So, but my first love is, I love design and I really do love typography. When I saw the title, it says mastering, I was like, oh, no, mastering. Like, a little scared me, though. I was like, oh, no.
We are mastering.
No. I'm no master. I'm a student of design. I'm a student of typography, and there's just so much to learn that, I'm still learning. So, a little bit more about me. If you guys can't tell from my British accent, nah, I'm joking. Like, I was born in Haiti, and I live in Orlando. I've been designing there for as long as I've been in design. Just a general screenshots of some of the work that I've done, personal work, not like client work or anything like that. Like, anytime I get a chance to just practice and my skills and just do something without constraint, and then I really just do go out and try to bring something nice, like using typography, of course, as much as I can, because some client project you can't, you don't have as much flexibility and freedom. So always good to do things with no constraint. 10 years in design, like I said. I'll skip this fly, and today this whole conversation is really gonna be like my thoughts on typography and what I think of when I think of type and how I use it and things like that. So that's my intro, and before I dive into the rest, I want to give the mic back to Brendan and see if there's anything he wants to add.
No, man, we're just super excited. And by the way, this is just a caveat, and then I'm going to give the mic back to you. We're going to be doing some amazing things here, and Jaslin we would love if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat as we're going over things. We can definitely have a nice back and forth dialogue and conversation. This is a teaching moment, not just a tutorial. So I'll leave that there, hand the mic back to you.
Awesome, thank you for this. Yeah, so like before I dive in, I want to talk about type history, right? And there's an asterisk in type classification because there's a lot more than what I have up there. There's if you really want to get technical, there's like hundreds and then subcategories and other things. But you're not here for a really diving into type history, because I don't even really know the full history of all these things. So this is my own classification of typeface. So what I like to do, so I like to classify things as serif and serif, sans serif, and display. So serifs, I like to think of it as like the sheriff. It has a badge, and the badge has a little pointy thing, right? So that's one way I remember it. Again, find your own way if you need. So serif has the little pointy thing. Sans serif is the one without the pointy thing. Sans meaning without in French. And then display and headline typefaces. In under display, that script, monotype, and other some stuff fall under that for me. So typically, most places, if you Google online and type classification, the simplified version of the type classification is usually 5: serif, sans serif, display, monotype, and script, right? But again, my goal is to simplify it as much as I can, because typically I don't use monotype on anything that's display, and I consider script to also be display typefaces, because I never really use script as body copy. So I just simplify this for my own sake and be like, yep, there's only 3. And some people will fight me in this, and I'm okay with it.
We're okay with fighting words. We
exactly. Yeah, words only. Please do not attack.
Yes.
So serif, and this is just some examples of stuff of some of my work and other people's work. And so this is something I did. So Saul text, which is one of my favorite serif typefaces for many reasons. Right, I love to use a type family that's pretty big. And the thing, and forgive me, like I probably mispronounce every single one of those things because I learned them by reading. I've never heard anyone say them, so I have no idea if that's the right pronunciation. So, like I say Saul, and it could be Saul. I have no idea. So, I'm just saying, I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. Like I have no idea how to pronounce some of these things, but it doesn't matter. So, and if anybody in the audience actually do know the right pronunciation and you want to write down the phonetic way, like that would be great. I want to learn. So, I love this family because it's pretty big. And the advantage with using like a family like that is like it has text, which you can use as body copy. It has display. It has like condensed, regular, bold. And the advantage with doing something like that is that you can stick with one family. And And as you dive deeper into type, like the one thing you'll learn, like type pairing gets a little bit complicated, but if you can stick with one family, because a typeface, will always pairs well with itself. So if you use Saul, for example, and you use the display for your header, you use the text for the body copy, then this actually works really well. I did not do this in this example. I used 2 different types, but just saying like, it is an advantage of using a big family. And then sans serif, this is another one of my, Fuji sans, I from the Penguin type foundry. These guys do some amazing type. Again, this is one of my favorite sans serif typefaces. I use it all the time. And then display, I couldn't find any of my work where I use a display type because I find some, there's just nothing I was, I wanted to show, I guess. So I picked one from my my mentor / teacher, Nguyen Lee, which is, he teaches the Process Masterclass, and he's been, somebody that not only that I looked up to him before he became my mentor and my teacher, like, he's like an amazing, like, designer and creative director, and now mentor and teacher. And, and he has a free book that he put out, from Process Masterclass, it's a type playbook, which goes into even deeper into like the little snippet I just showed you guys, like type classifications and type pairing and all this really awesomeness, and it's free. I mean, literally, he did all the work, and then you can just download it for free just by typing like type playbook Process Masterclass, and then you can get it. So. Yeah, so that's a brief history of type, and as brief as I want to keep it, because again, if you want to really dive into it, like, you can probably Google it, and you'll probably find somebody out there that tells you about this one German guy that did this one type, and it seems to be a lot of German people that invented a lot of type. So again, maybe like this is a stereotype, or I don't know, but they seem to be really great at it. Like, a lot of the most famous typographers that I know of are German, so it's a great thing. So I love it. But yeah, so we're not gonna dive into like that deep into that history, because I don't really know it that well. But what I will do is give you guys a couple tools that I use on my day-to-day, like when it comes to designing and using typography and where I go. And the 2 other than the playbook that I mentioned, which is another one that I go to all the time, is these 2. Font in Use and Typewolf. And I want to talk a little bit about like the reason for using these 2 specifically for me. So when I'm diving into, and again, if you guys have questions now, feel free to ask, because I can go on and on forever. So please do let me know if you have questions. So I like Font in Use because it's always great to look at what other people that have done with certain typeface, and people that there are definitely very talented people out there that more talented than myself. So I want to I want to learn from these people. So fun and use. So like when I come across a typography, like a typeface that I love, I want to see how people applied it and how they used it, right? And then so I'll go to fun and use and see it in action. Like I get to see it in print, I get to see it in web, I get to see it in packaging, and then just collect. And so for each typeface that I come across that I love, I create a mood board of it. And what I mean is let's say like Enter, for example, is one of those typefaces, and I'm like, whoa, this type looks amazing. So I'll go to Fun and Use, and then I'll click on Enter and find like any piece of inspiration that I felt like, wow, that's a great use of this type. So I'll create a mood board with just Enter in it, and then just snapshots of where it's been used and how it's been used, and just have a snapshot of those in a dedicated place. That so when it comes time for me to use that type, then I can then go to that mood board and just look at how it's been used and how the people have taken advantage of it, and how they use it, and then learn from those people. Same thing with Type Wolf. I do the same thing, especially when I'm doing more digital stuff, which is what I do mostly now. I no longer do print. But I go to Type Wolf, and again, I'll look for that typeface, and see it in action on other people's website and see how they've used it. And it's not always, and the thing to keep in mind, part of it is subjective. I mean, because something like looks great to me might not look great to you, but it's your mood board, so you put whatever you want in there, right? And what you think is great. And some of that mood board, this is an example of what that mood board. I didn't actually create this one. This is actually one from somebody that I also considered a mentor, that he did this piece, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I mean. So the advantage with having like a mood board, so his is a little bit more eclectic. It's not just one type, it's just a bunch of different typefaces in use, but it's still just having that inspiration to pull from and being able to go in there and see this type in use. And to me, you see something like this, right? Without knowing how to lay this thing out properly, without the right kerning and leading, this piece would look chaotic. But because the person that did it knows what they were doing, and they know how to lay out the typeface, they know the right kerning, and they know, it's just so much attention that went into it, that it looked artistic as opposed to chaotic. Well, but again, that's subjective. And to me, it looks great. I was like, wow, this is a really great layout and a really great way of giving that information where it still looked artistic, as opposed to here's a bunch of typefaces all over the place. I mean, you look at the piece like that again, still very artistic, not chaotic. There was a lot of attention behind it. So I like to collect those type of pieces before just having mood board. I use My Mind right now is one of those tools again that I use. And there's a lot of them, like Pinterest. You can go in there and just create your own board and just have just pin stuff. So whatever is easier for you, just collect inspiration and just have things that you can go back to and look at what other people's done, in the industry, that are doing great, and learn from them. Not copy, you grab inspiration from a lot of different sources. Because somebody once said, I think it was, inspiration from one source is stealing, but inspiration from a lot of different sources is, well, it's not stealing, because you're being inspired by those sources. So, so do avoid that. So typically what I do when I start a project, I try to avoid looking for inspiration in the same medium that I'm designing in. So if I'm doing if I'm doing a website, I probably spend half of my time looking into print stuff first before I dive into looking at other websites. Yeah, I will still look at websites, but I like to have just a variety of places to pull inspiration from and things like that. So
it sounds like it sounds, because I think this is actually really important. I think, and you could actually, I would love to have you clarify this. I think the reason why you're able to keep typography to something on a simpler level that rather than complicate it is because we know when something looks good and we know when stuff looks bad. It's just, regardless if you're trained in it or not. Like the people who aren't trained, they still can be a critic because they have an eye. And so I think you're utilizing something that everybody has. You're going through and creating mood boards for yourself and being, I like this, I like that, let me try this. And then you have a board in which you are trying to essentially, what we're going to talk about is reverse engineering things that from people who know what they're doing and figuring out how you can do the same. And I think that's like a very strong like soundbite that I think will allow people, even though they haven't had years of expertise and understanding like how many points of kerning or blah, 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 you can still get to a high level keeping things basic. I just wanted to like kind of like take that kernel and throw it out there.
No, you're 100% right. And, you know, in the beginning, like, you know, what I used to do a lot of, and I know a lot of people say it, like, you know, take something from somebody you love and you just think like, wow, this piece is amazing, and take it into whatever tool you use, whether it's XD, Photoshop, Illustrator, and try to replicate it, right? And of course, you know, I'm going to say this out loud in big, bold letter, do not publish it as your own. You know, it's good to do this type of exercise, but don't publish it as your own work because it's stealing. But so the first thing I used to do, like, you know, I'll find a piece that I love and then I try to replicate it by literally taking, like, find out the typeface they use and then put my type directly on top of theirs with the right kerning, and then just and I do that enough, and then I start seeing the pattern. I start understanding, like, you know, how they do that. And then the next step you do, then trying to duplicate it without actually like going directly on top of it. Like literally just have theirs on the side and have yours on the side and go on your own. And then when you're done, and then you look at both pieces, and what used to shock me a lot was like, I mean, I did exactly what he did, the exact same word, but some reason theirs always looked better than mine. And what it really is the small little details, the little kerning here, because those are the things that take it from good to great. And then eventually you start developing an eye for these things, and you start developing, like, you know, a sense of, oh, I need a little bit more of this. And at some point too, like, you know, when you get so, like, when you become even more comfortable, and which is a great thing that eventually when it happens, you're like, oh, I no longer need to look at that because now I'm just gonna go based on my own kerning. I'm like, you see, I see this, it looks great, but I think if you go a little bit more, it would have been better. Like you start noticing things that you can improve, because, you know, design is about, you know, your own, being able to bring your own experience in your own eyes into things. So, you know, you know, your experience matters, like some, like, you know, so do take that into consideration. Like, you know, part of it is subjective, but, you know, we can objectively agree that, you know, a lot of these things are beautiful. But I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know if you guys still looking at the screen, but I mean, these things are amazing. But, you know, let's dive into, like, you know, the project that, you know, I want to talk to you guys about today, and show you some of our process in this one, right? So, yeah, so this is the project we're gonna be working on. So, and a little bit of background about who is it? You see what I mean?
He's like,
Hui. Actually, I think it's Hui, which is Hawaiian for
Hui.
Yeah, which is Hawaiian for gathering. And no, I did not come up with the name. And I just saw it, thought it was good. I'm like, oh, I want to do something with it. So yeah, this project was, you know, so a little bit of background. So I was in the process of like moving out, trying to get a new house and selling a current home, and you know, and my wife and my kids, and I have 2 daughters, and we were just like, you know, going from like houses to houses. And the one thing that I kept seeing was like, man, like these people, there's some houses we went to look at it, and like, I mean, the furniture, the way they decorate the place, I was just like, holy man, this is like, they really, like, you know, trying to sell this thing. So I was like, and then I had this idea of like, you know, and I came home and I was like, I had this idea of like creating a website that sells furniture, but not just like, you know, like just regular furniture, but they more like pieces of art, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like these pieces,
Designer.
yeah, like these pieces are created with intention, and they like goes well with each other, kind of thing, and these are not like furniture that I can't afford. So really, what I was thinking of Brandon, because I mean, like I don't have Brandon money, so I can't afford this.
Cool.
Like,
man, I stick with my beanbag. There is no need for no designer couches. I need a fainting couch. That's about it.
Nah, like once you start making that Brandon money, bro, like you can afford this type of furniture. I mean, you see the space he's in? It's not a green screen, man. This dude's in an actual spaceship. So trust me, I've been there. I've seen it in real life. No joke. But no, so so this is kind of like how this piece came together, like, and a lot of hours and thoughts went into this, but when I started this project, like so something that I do, and the advantage with collecting those screenshots of typeface that you love, collecting screenshots and having mood boards of typefaces and where they've been used, is that once you have all those things, and then you can start putting things in context, right? You can start like at least for me, like when I think of like, oh man, I want to do this piece, I just start thinking of like, okay, do I want to go serif, sans serif, or display? And then I start eliminating some of those things. I'm like, well, obviously I think serif would be better for this one. And then I start going to the list of serif typefaces in my head, and I'm like, oh man, I remember seeing this one typeface that was used for this one thing that had that very elegant feel to it. That's what I should use for this one. And that's why collecting those pieces is important. And so yeah, like so we can. I'm gonna kind of like walk you guys through my process and how I do things, and so for that I'm just gonna create a new board. And by the way, do you guys have any questions like so far? Because I'm moving at the speed of light.
Yeah, guys, remember, feel free that. Essentially, you guys are essentially just saying in the chat right now that there is no reason to say fonts out loud because they're really just trying to get you. I love that's like the battle in the chat right now. Brought up by Kyle, and everybody else is basically just agreeing. But if you guys have questions or struggles with typography, how or where, we dropped some resources in the chat. But if there's particular problems that you're having with typography, for your own self, like in your projects, please drop them in the chat. This is the time to have conversations with the people, not only in chat, but with us. So please.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of show you guys like, my process. And the way I designed this piece was a little different, right? So I actually started with the product page first. Yeah. And the reason why is because, well, my idea was that, well, this is the moneymaker page, right? And something like one of my mentors said, and that stuck with me forever, was that design in context, right? So, and what he meant by that was saying like you should never design with just using lower mid. And I'm guilty of doing it. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys. I do it sometimes, but design in context. So before you actually start to put your pieces together, like thinking of your layout and your typeface, like get some copy. Like if you can write, good for you, write some great copy. If you can't write, look at, even if you go to another site just to pull some copy, and then just like wordsmith it a little bit to make it a little bit like just enough, like you don't have to publish it as your own, but just enough to have some context around what you're doing. And I think the way he said it, like if you design without context, you're decorating, you're not designing, and which is true. And because as designers, we're more than just decorators. It's not just about, oh, let's just put these pieces together and make it pretty, but these pieces actually need to function. A design that doesn't function is not, it's not design. Essentially, it literally is decorating. So I'm gonna kind of like so for this project, like this is the first page that I designed, and when I started this page, my first thought was, okay, I already knew, and it doesn't always happen, but I already knew like which typefaces they wanted to use, so that simplified. But sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes like I have the idea, and then once I have context, I have some copy and I have some context, then I go to places like font and use, or I go to Pinterest and just start diving in and see what people are using. But I kind of already had an idea what I wanted to do. So, sorry about that, Brandon.
It's all good. We had 3 Brandons and 3 Jaslins. It's all good. This stream got better.
But and also I love to go to type foundries. Like this is just one of these typefaces that I discovered recently, and I've been like just all at it, but I can't afford it. This type licensing is very complicated, and I don't even want to get into it, and expensive.
Yeah, we actually had some questions about how do you go, because you were telling me earlier, and it's very much understood in the chat as well. How do you get to use good typography without breaking the bank? Like, how do you go about typography on a budget? Let's talk about that.
Like, obviously, like, the one way that I the best and easiest way, if you have clients that, when I first started, that wasn't an option, right? Like, I didn't have a client that was willing to shell out like big bucks for me to buy type license to use in their project. It was like, yeah, no, like, because they come to you, their budget is not even enough to actually do the work. There's definitely not enough budget to buy license. So, but the good thing with nowadays, like, and the advantage that we have is that there's a lot of free alternative typefaces, and that was going to be something that I dive into, is that if you've seen it and you love it, there's probably an alternative of it. It might not be like as great, like, obviously, because but it might be close enough where you still can get that same feel to it. And Typewolf does a pretty amazing job of offering, like, whether it's Adobe from the Adobe kit or free Google font. So there's definitely alternatives. So, but yeah, the typefaces are expensive. There's just no other way around it, and especially if you want to do it, the right way. You guys all know what I mean. For sure.
I think Typewolf does a really good job, because you look up the font that you want and it literally lists free alternatives. So if you guys so that's a huge resource for you guys. Like the golden triangle that Jaslin was smart enough to start with it. Fonts in use, Typewolf, and that PDF that what is it? The Process Masterclass. Yes. Like, check those 3 things out. They're huge when it comes to what are the good fonts, how they're used, where you can purchase them in alternatives. Like, those are the big things.
And the type playbook actually has like a huge list of free typefaces that are just amazing. So that's a beautiful thing too. Like, when you're just starting, honestly, I would say don't shell out the money to buy the most expensive typeface. I mean, I think the future has like a 10 tips on how to master typography, and in that 10 tips they had a list of, use any typeface you want as long as it's one of those, and it was Gotham, Helvetica, Futura, and so on. But for me, like, when I started, like, I also Gotham, like, I think that one is free. I honestly, I don't know. It was always in my computer, so it's been so long. Let's just say it's free. There's Gotham, like, beautiful typeface. Montserrat, that's another free typeface, like, in terms of like sans serif that just looks amazing. And there's definitely a lot of free alternative if you don't have the money or the client that's willing to actually spend the money to help you get some of the more expensive ones. Obviously, as your collection grow, and you can afford to, like, I mean, I'm very frugal. like
we got AMC to buy.
Exactly, 8 stones together, right? But so I don't just shell out my money on just buying typeface on a regular, because honestly, you will probably spend more money in just buying typeface that you probably never use. Like, because that's another thing too. That happens. Like, you get so excited about seeing a type, and you're like, yeah, I gotta buy it, and then you buy it, and you just never have a use for it. So buy it when you need it, but don't buy it just to collect dust. Because I used to, you have like so many free stuff you can use. So take advantage of the free stuff first. So I'm gonna kind of show you guys like my process, right? So in what I did in here was, I already knew the typeface I was going to use, and a lot of that is because I have those mood boards and I have those things that I collect. So I come in here, and the typeface I'm going to use is called, okay, this one should be easy, right? It's called UGG. You see? Even the easy ones are complicated. But there's no S in it. So I think it's UGG. But then again, knowing these people, they probably like, oh, like, you know, it's like the whole GIF thing, you know, it's like at some point you just give up on it. So, you know, so this is the reason I love this website, right? So you select the type that you want to use. And the great thing about it, they give you a little bit of the background of the typography. And this is important, you know, especially when it comes to pairing type, understand the history when it was created. Is it a modern typeface? Is it a grotesque? Is it like understand that little bit of history will help you find pairing. But if you're like me, like, you know, and you just, you know, you really don't want to have to do all that work, just look at what other people have done. and look at what works. Obviously, like, you know, once you do start doing that a little bit more, you start developing a sense for it. And I am at that point now where I'm like, I can see them like, oh, I already know which kind of type I kind of want to pair with it. But when I first started, I'll just look at what the other people were doing. And, you know, you come in here like, you know, this is a beautiful type also, you know, that goes really well. And there's always Helvetica. I mean, at some point, okay, I'm going to say this, but if you could avoid Helvetica, I would say do it. Not because it's not a beautiful type, because it's amazing, but it's also overused. So it really, unless you know how to use it in a way where you can make it stand out, because there are people that can use, I mean, I knew one logo designer that only used Helvetica for all of his logo, and he the one that created the American Airlines logo. I'm just saying, this dude is a legend. Yeah,
that's crazy.
But he only uses Helvetica for everything he does. So, like, you know, so obviously, you know, that being said, like, you know, but if you can avoid it, like, use Gotham in its place, right? Even though now Gotham is becoming the new Helvetica, where it's becoming overused, but, you know, find a substitute for it, because it is, everyone uses it. It's definitely overused and it's hard to stand out. All right, so just gonna go, like, look at this list, you read, like, you know, and then another thing to pay attention to, start noticing, like, the pattern, right? So, like, I'll come in here, I'm like, active grotesque, like, I'm not paying attention to the first part, I'm looking at the category, it's grotesque. I'm like, that's an interesting, and then I kept going, I'm like, oh, another grotesque. Like, and then you start noticing, like, you know, a lot of, like, oh, another grotesque. Like, you start seeing this little pattern, is that it seems like this typeface, like, you know, UGG and a grotesque typeface kind of pairs well. Not saying, like, you know, any grotesque will do, but you kind of start getting the idea of, like, you know, what people seem to pair it with grotesque, like with a grotesque, like, you know, some in a grotesque family. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, just open a couple screenshots. And then when I saw this one, I was like, man, this is amazing. But this was the screen that got me, right? So, and this is why I love typography. You look at this poster, there's nothing in there. I mean, it's literally a water droplet, sweat thingy. I don't know what that is. But then you come down, like, you know, it's just words, changing your skin story. But the reason this looks amazing is the kerning, the leading, the spacing of these little things, right? So what you do and what I do, I take a screenshot. It's that simple. I paste it here, and then I'm like, cool, one screenshot down. And you know, I do this for, like, you know, like, and I'm gonna save you guys, like, you know, the trouble of, like, going through like 50 pages of screenshots. But, you know, so, like, say, like, I collected a few of those things, right, just to kind of start having a sense of what I want to do. So we got one, and then I'll go to the site of TypeWolf, and for whatever reason, like, when it comes to TypeWolf, like, I can't search. I don't know how to search for this, exactly what I'm looking for. So I just type TypeWolf and then the name of what I'm looking for. Just saying, sometimes Google is your
That's much smarter.
So,
yeah.
Boom. and then I got to the page that I need to be. And also, if you guys see, like, this is, for anyone that's a designer, like Muesli, again, I think that's how you say it. So every time I open my a Chrome tab, I get this thing. It's just a daily dose of design inspiration. Like, I'm constantly seeing great design everywhere I go. So I'm like, wow, this is really nice. I will take a screenshot of this, or I use like the MindMind plugin and just add it to my mind, so that way I can go back to it. Like, so that's a way of keeping yourself, like, constantly getting like little screenshots and things like that.
Yeah.
I need to move a little faster, right?
Let's, because I think this really illustrates how to do the inspiration portion. We have a lot of questions on like things that will really, if we transition here, getting into how do we take the inspiration and start getting some things on the artboard. We have questions like, okay, well, after inspiration, how do we choose the actual sizing of the typography? Simple things like that. How do we put the things together after inspiration is a lot of the questions that we're getting.
Yep. All right. So we'll say these are all the inspiration I need. Bada boom, bada bam. I can't believe I just said that live. But here we go. So, and the question that you guys have is it's a valid question, right? How do I then take all these inspirations, and how do I then choose, like, how to use it? So one thing I would say, like, when it comes to, like, especially serif, and when it comes to display typeface, like, so let's look at the two inspirations we have. We only have two, and then we'll go to it really quick. Changing Your Skin Story and Margaret Wahish. Okay, here we go again. You guys get the pattern that I don't know how to pronounce this. And so the one thing they both have in common when they're using this specific typeface is that this typeface looks really nice when it's big. It's not meant to be small. It's not meant to be a body copy. It's meant to be headlines. So, like, and part of it too is, like, it really depends on, what you're doing. Like, obviously, like, you could come in here and be like, what, I'm just gonna make this, I don't know, something ridiculous. Like, I have this copyright thingy in there that, it's a different size, and I'm just gonna take it up for now. And that's why I was saying, like, context matter. So designing with context, designing with intention, like, having some copy to go on. Obviously, like, I could have come in here and just make this, like, like a lot of the work that I do. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff I love using, like, gigantic type. But, like,
how do you know the size? Because I think we're trained enough, and I think it's also because we look at other websites quite often enough to be like, this is the correct size that I've seen on other sites. Like, some people are like, how do you know that I shouldn't do 200 pixels? Or, even how do you know that I shouldn't do 300 pixels? Is it the same rule of I looked at other sites, inspected to see what their pixel size was, and I used that in my current projects, or what is it?
No, again, it really comes down to context, right? And having a sense of what your layout is going to be, because that really comes down to that too. Because yes, I could have easily gotten 300 pixels plus, but then it wouldn't fit within this layout. Because again, having the context of, I'm trying to sell a product, and the most important thing when you're selling a product is you got to show people the photos. And then two, you got to put the product name and you got to put a description, because no one's going to scroll down. Like, at least for this specific example, this product page, that was the goal, right? But, so that's why I was like, okay, if this name got any longer, and, and that's why, like, having some text helps. Like, you pick whatever the longest text, you're like, okay, if this gets any longer, will this still work at 300? Well, if this was like 4 lines, will it look as good? No. And therefore you work around that. And having a general system also help. Like, in one of the one that I use a lot, and like, if you're not comfortable with doing your own type scales, this is great. this is literally like the best thing that could happen to you, and because it's simplified for you, right? So what you do, you come in here, you decide on what your base size is going to be, and you know, I use the grade system, and I'm not gonna dive into this for this presentation. It's my way of getting Brendan to bring me back. But you know, so you decide what your base size is going to be. So your base size is like, you know, what the body copy you want it to be. Like, and sometimes you don't know the answers, and you might have to come back and change it. And let's say for me, like, you know, I want it to be 18 or 22, whatever it's gonna be, right? And then you pick, you know, like major third it's safe, honestly. Like, you know, if you want to be like golden ratio and all those things, I just go with major third. That's just my preference. And this gives you a sense of what your H1 should be, what your H2 should be. And again, they just guide. You don't have to stick to it like it's the gospel. But when you're just starting, this is a good way of being able to have, because, you know, it's all about hierarchy, right? So, but this helps you, like, you know, create that hierarchy of like, okay, based on, you know, my base size, you know, my H1 should be 6 to 7. But once you start to have a better sense for it, you'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna go 80. Right, like, you know, in all 86, and then you're gonna start being able to do this. But it really comes down to practice. There's not a trick of, you know, that I can show that really, but this is one good way of starting. Like type scales, like it's amazing, it's free, and honestly, use it. Just put your base grade, pick major third or golden ratio. Because I mean, people love golden ratio. I mean, you know, it's like, oh, you know, like that's massive. You know, I'm not one of those. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that's like really into the golden ratio thing. Like, I'm like, it's design. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be mathematically correct. Like, you know, it's like there has to be alignment. Obviously, there has to be, like, you know, a sense of, you know, why you're doing this thing. But it's design at the end of the day. Like, you have to judge it based on what it looks like. Optically, at the end of the day, that's the goal. Like, you know, you have to judge it optically. You have to look at it and be like, yep, this looks great, or this doesn't. And a lot of what we do is... Go ahead, Brendan.
Oh, no. I was basically just saying you just blew everybody's minds and mine, including with that online tool. And then Excellence said that there's actually a plugin from Typescale, that company, in Adobe XD, which I did not know. It's just it's over. It's so
mind blown.
Yes.
You know, so, like, you know, this, oh, and by the way, let me just write out the name of the type that we are using, which, again, these two are probably two of my favorite. I think I said that about pretty much every typeface, so don't listen to me. Like, I literally love every typeface that looks great. So they're all my favorites. You know, and the one thing I want to show you guys with these types, right? Like the difference between when to do lowercase and when to do uppercase, and I'm gonna show you how that changed this look and feel. And
please.
Okay, so both are the exact same size. The only difference is one is all uppercase and one is all lowercase. And this is where optically come in. Like, so if you look at this, which one of those screams luxurious and expensive and sophisticated to you? The uppercase one or the lowercase one?
I think the first one.
Right? And you know, and the reason why is because, like, this type has, and this is where you pay attention to the thing. I'm gonna zoom in, right? So this type has like this very thin, like little tail. I'm sure there's a proper name for it. Like over here, that really makes it stand out. That really give it that wow, like, you know, this type is beautiful look. But when you go all uppercase, the problem is like they all become in the same. You lose that. You lose those small. They're still there, but they all look, because there's no differentiation between like each letters anymore, because they all look very blocky. So you lose that slickness to it. You look that expensiveness to it, which of course there's time for this. But for what we're doing, again, that's why context matters. But for what we're doing, we want to have that sleekness, that expensive look feel to it. And And one thing I want to show you guys, like, because and you guys probably thinking like, well, something I always say, so I'm gonna make 2 duplicates of this page, right? Because we are running out of time, man. This is
time went quick. It was like, whoo.
And the thing with design, and I say this a lot, is that you have free real estate. Seriously, this, you don't pay for this. Like, this is, very, I wasn't trying to even make a pun, but furniture, real estate, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a stretch on the pun, but I'll show you guys the difference between, like, it's not just about, like, great typeface and putting the, because you can have the same type, but if your spacing is not right, then this also lose that sleekness. Take advantage of your white space. Take advantage of, like, knowing, like, you don't pay for the space, use it. Let the type breathe, because the one thing with a type that's this detailed and that's this pretty, if I may say so myself, like, is that it needs room to stand out. So don't put everything else so close to it that you can no longer appreciate the beauty of it, because that's the beautiful thing about design. So, like, I'm gonna show you guys an example, right? And I'm just gonna, like, completely ruin this thing by removing some of this spacing, just to illustrate my point, is that it's not just putting the right space. It's not just about the right typography. It's about the spacing. Now look at these 2 pieces. Okay, maybe you'll be like, yeah, that's we're overdoing it. It will never be this way, like, But you look at these 2 pieces, right? And it's the same type. I didn't change the typeface. I didn't change the font. I didn't change anything. The only thing I did is to change the spacing, and automatically this piece no longer has that same sleekness. And again, it's all in context, right? This is a furniture, and this is places you're gonna put in your house. So you think of, like, furniture in your house. You don't put them all next to each other. You space them out. Like, this everything you do you should have a reason for it. And at the end of the day, your reason could just easily be like, well, it looks better this way. Trust me. I mean, when you sell it to the client, maybe do a little bit more than just it looks better this way. But sometimes that's all good too, because it does look better this way, right? And and another thing too, some of you may like, well, yeah, this looks great because you have amazing photos. But again, don't design around your photos, but rather create your layouts and everything and get your photo to fit within what you do, but not the other way around. Like, your typography and your spacing, these are your 2 biggest design elements that most people ignore. Like, your spacing is super important. Your type is obviously, here's the reason we're here. So in my list of things, like, the 2 things I say that are the most important, my typography and my spacing. Everything else, the site should still look great. If your images don't load, your site should still look like there was thoughts put into it. And one way you can do that, like, I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna put a gray box over all this typeface, all these images. And just bear with me here. I'm looking at the time. I'm moving fast, and man, I was like, when I was coming in, I was like, oh man, I'll get to this in like 5 minutes. Nope.
Well, the chat is saying, when is the next time you're coming on, and when are you starting your channel? They're already asking for part 2.
Well, like, I mean, a lot of you guys don't know, but Brendan and I, we are related.
Yes.
So, if you can't tell, yes, I know he's a few shades darker than me, but you can't tell. But no, I don't know, Brendan. When am I coming back?
When you have the time, man. Anytime.
If
there's a sweet potato, there's a live.
Exactly, right? Let's look at these 2 pieces, right? So I took out all the photos. And don't get me wrong, like, you should 100% have a mood board of your photography. You should know, they should have that look and feel to match within your layout and to match within the context. I mean, my photos where I put time and of course, credit to their respective owners. I don't own any of these things, but I took time to look for photos that would fit what I'm doing within the context of what I'm doing. But the site didn't just look great because I had great photos. it looks great because I put a lot of thoughts into the spacing. I put a lot of thoughts into how my typography is gonna lay out. I put a lot in, you know, like I'm gonna do one more thing with this one, and I'm gonna duplicate it and just kind of show you the what I mean, right? This type, remember what I said in the beginning, this type works really well when it's big because it has a lot of details. Therefore, you have to give it like room to be beautiful and be big because it demands attention, right? So let's say like, you know, I decided like, you know, I'm just gonna use this as body copy. Don't do that. Seriously, like, you know, these typefaces are not made for that because when they go small, they no longer look great. They're not meant to be small because you lose those small details in them. Because the reason this type look great is because of all that little, like, you know, the type designer puts so much love into creating, like, you know, these little things, like, you know, the little things over here and these things over there. So don't abuse them by making it like, you know, this small. Like, and let's zoom out real quick, right? And see the difference, right? So if I use this type as body copy, obviously you'll be like, you know, you have better spacing. It lose that slickness. It lose that thing that really just bring it home. So, you know, but this one, and I'm gonna go back to this board and show you guys, because like this typeface is meant to be used as body copy. And the reason why it's great is because, well, look at, like, when you zoom in, it's a beautiful type and it has its own personality. And that's another thing too to also do, like, you know, when you look at a typeface, you can give it a personality. And it sounds a little wacky, but seriously, like when I look at this, I'm like, well, this typeface seems expensive. It seems somebody that has money. It's sophisticated. So I would even go as far as say it's a little bit pretentious because of all this, like you know, this little extra, you know, little, like, you know, it's a better pretentious typeface, but which fits perfectly with what we're doing over here, because these are $8,000, $9,000 furnitures that Brendan, like, you know, is buying. So, and Brendan is a bit pretentious, which is good.
That's how my name was like spelt out when I was born. Like that's the font on the letter.
But when you come to this one, which is a Zindes, again, and I went with a Groce, but it also has its personality. It's slick, but it doesn't deem as much attention as this one does because the letters doesn't have all those extra things, but it's still a very legible and beautiful typeface. Therefore, it's like, if this is, you know, the main one, this is like, you can consider this as like, it's its butler essentially. Like it's there to support it. It's there to care. Like it's its manager. You know, maybe not butler. It's his manager. It's in the background doing all the heavy lifting while this one is shining. Because the goal of this is for this to be legible and just be there, but not necessarily grabbing the attention. But they pairs really well together because this has all those extra detail where this is just like, it's not boring, obviously, because it's a beautiful type. There's definitely a lot of, like, you know, the A's, the way they do the B, and like, you know, there's a lot of touch that went into this, but it really helped this one stands out. And that's why, like, you know, when we go in these places, like, you know, like I use it like as just headlines. Like, just
and did
headlines.
you choose that font purely because through your inspirations, or how did you come to the conclusion that, like, I see this font and I see this font, this one's the headline, the other one is the manager? Do you come to that conclusion through your inspiration?
Yeah, and it really was like, you know, this one was a case of, I saw the typeface, I've seen it in use, and then I was like, man, like, I have a vision of where I could use this. Right? And that's why collecting those inspiration and seeing them in use helps, like, you know, so for you to be able to visualize where you could potentially use this specific typeface. So that's kind of like how I was able to choose that. But not that said, again, when it's like, you know, when we go to TypeWolf and, you know, like, closest match in Adobe font, like, obviously they didn't show, but you can literally just Google this name and then find the closest things to it, and then you can easily substitute that, and you still should be able to get that same look and feel. It's not necessarily just for this. I mean, it won't be the exact same thing. Obviously, this typeface is designed, it's very unique within itself, but you can find a close alternative and get the same thing. The thing to keep in mind is your spacing, and your spacing is very important, as I demonstrate, show you guys over here. It's super, super important to have to think of your spacing as you go into this, and think of the type. It needs room to breathe. It needs room to be itself. So give it that room. And if you use a grade system or you use that type scale that I showed you guys in the beginning, that will help. But when it comes to the spacing and thing, it really comes down to optic. You have to judge it optically. I do have certain rules that I set in place for my spacing that I tend to follow, but at the end of the day, I still go back and be 5 pixels up, 2 pixels down, 5. That's what design is.
With the eyes.
Up. Exactly, 2 pixels, because they paying you because you're bringing something to the table that someone else is not, and that's really just your eyes, your experience, the places you've been. Take all of those things that makes you unique and use them into your layout. And use them as inspiration, places that you've been and things like that. So I know we started late, but I think I got through it all. I mean, there's a lot more I want to do, and I didn't realize actually how short 1 hour is. But
it's all good, man. We can always have a part 2. I think we hit on a lot of things everybody was asking. We actually do have a lot of questions. So because we did, it's all up to you, and there's a couple questions that I think we can close with. And if we do have a part 2, we definitely can set up a little bit more in depth on the things that you had left over for this. I think people are still wanting more of that. But you want to do some Q&A, and then we can close out like that? All right, let's do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to switch to Q&A. If you guys haven't already submitted your questions, we have a Rolodex full of them, so we're going to go through them very quickly. We might switch back into Adobe XD to showcase some things, but we have Yadira asking, because there's a couple people that have been literally asking multiple times, so we haven't forgot you, but we're going to ask your questions first. All right, Yadira has been asking, let's see, how do you kern and undo ligatures in XD? I think he's had problems with taking copy and making sure that the styling stays the same in XD. Do you have something to mitigate that particular problem, or any thoughts there?
Like kerning?
Kerning in XD, or I think the challenge was when he copies copy from somewhere and brings it into XD, his style changes in XD, which I think you might just have to redo your styling in XD, but any thoughts on that?
So it's a twofold answer, right? So and I have a lot of mentors, and they all say a lot of things. But one of my mentors also said, never let default be your default. When you bring in the type, always tweak it. Never, default is your enemy. It should never just be copy, paste, done. You should always tweak it, because there's always, whether it's the leading, whether it's the kerning, always tweak it. Yes, I don't know if there's a trick to bring in and keep the style of it. But what you can do is create your text style. So when you bring it in, you can just easily one click and apply your text style to that text. When it comes to kerning and stuff, what I do, and I'm sure there's probably a better way of doing it, I just highlight what I need to, and then I just go into the side panel and play with it there. That just that's just my way of doing it. Not necessarily saying it's the best way to do it. This is the way I handle my kerning. I literally go into the side panel and just play with it. It's the same thing with the leading. That's just the way I do it. But yeah, so create text style and never let your copy that you bring in be your default. Always tweak something when you bring in your text, whether it's the kerning, whether it's the leading. And then general rule of thumb is you guys might already know this, is for your leading, leading line height, whichever one you guys use, is 1.2. So whatever your typeface is, so if this is 90, then you do 90 times 1.2. Again, it doesn't always work, because at the end of the day, we are designers and we have to judge things optically. If it's body copy and it's a lot of it, then you multiply by 1.6 or 1.4, whatever. But it's just general rule of thumbs. But always judge things optically. And if we do a grade episode, you know, I will show you guys how I use a grade to really help keep me in sync, because it can, and the process class also does, like, you know, does an amazing job with that, you know, showing the grade. And I think the type playbook that if you guys download it, they'll, like, the first few pages goes over like how to use a vertical grade to help with your letting. I'm sorry, I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope
I think it does. He was mentioning that XD does tracking, not kerning. I'm not sure if that's true.
Yeah, he's technically right. That is technically tracking, not kerning, because kerning requires you going in each letter individually and then space and then adding that. A lot of time, like the reason they probably don't do it is because it's hard to do kerning on the web. And typically, like when you're coding, they just apply tracking to everything as opposed to individual letter. I think now
it's more so.
Now they do have like kerning for the web now, but it's still not very supported by a lot of different browsers. I think Safari and maybe the latest version of Chrome might be the only two that support it. So that's probably a reason. So yeah, kerning, they definitely don't do kerning in Adobe XD. But you wouldn't be doing print stuff in XD. So Illustrator does kerning. But yeah, that's the reason they don't do kerning.
That's a print and graphic designer thing then.
Yep.
I call it like a thing, like it's important, but it's more so for another type of, for something different, not the.
It's super important, and if you can do it and for web, it does, when you're making your presentation, it does give that extra oomph, but a lot of time you won't be able to replicate that exact kerning in the web. So that's why XD lead with tracking, because you can actually at least replicate that on the web.
Definitely. All right. Well, I hope that answers your question, Yadira. Let's get a couple more here. Let's see. Akimi had a couple. And hey, just let me know when you have to run. How are we doing on time?
No. And shout out to Akimi. You know, she's awesome.
Akimi, we got shout outs. Hey, out on the live stream. We have a couple questions from her. Let me see. Have a couple people are asking about, we need that grid episode. Let's see. While I'm searching these other things, we had a quick question from Excellence Noob here. What's the difference? This is a quick question. What's the difference between tracking and kerning? I'm lost.
Yeah. So kerning, we can't show it in here, but kerning requires you going into like each individual, like here between the T and H. Like if I was kerning, then I want to bring these two letters together a little bit, or put them a little bit further apart. Where tracking, it doesn't do individual letters. It does the entire word. So you track everything all at once. So I don't know if we're seeing XD, but I can kind of show you, like, you know, how tracking work and how. So that's tracking, and like if I was to, so this is tracking, like going really wide. Like this, where it does the entire word. But kerning would have been like, you know, I want to like have a little bit more space between the H and R, and I would have been able to just put a little bit more. In Illustrator, you can just do Option and then the left and right arrow to do tracking within each individual letters, which is it. That small little detail does bring your typography to the next level, because sometimes like some letters, like, you know, like these right here, like, you know, you'd be like, okay, this like over here, like, okay, that's a little close, or maybe that's actually a better example between the E and the S, where it's like they like uncomfortably close. But if you were able to kern, then you can kind of like add a little bit of spacing to kind of match the spacing over there, because as you get bigger and with the type, things gets a little tighter. So having ability to kern will help fix those.
Sweet. All right. Hope that answers your question, Excellence, and everybody else that kind of needed a little bit of refresher on that beast. Akimi says, what size artboard? She has a lot of questions, which is good. We're all going to learn today. And I think these are good questions. what size artboards do you use default for mood boards when making them in XD? And do you open the file up to look at them or take a sneak peek via prototypes? Just really quick, like talk about I think you talked about this in the beginning, your mood board. It seems like you just copy and paste them into the artboard and keep it very lackadaisical.
My mood board, like what I was saying in the beginning, like, I create my mood board like in like either Pinterest or My Mind, which is another place where, like, because the reason why it's just make it easier for me to just see something and just pin it, as opposed to, like, taking a screenshot, opening a XD and pasting things in there. So that's how I do my mood board. So like I just have like one, but to answer that question about like the size of the artboard, it really doesn't matter. It all depends on how big you want things to be. You can get, like, don't get too crazy in trying to create a nice looking layout, because the goal is it's a mood board. Like, I mean, you can just, like, couple of things I would say, like, if you're creating a mood board, I would recommend, like, having the name of the typeface in there, like just having the name of the typeface. And if you want to put like a quick, like, where you've seen it in use, how you think it could be used, or like just something, whatever would be helpful for you, just put it in there. But other than that, it's if you need it to get bigger, make it bigger. Like, or if you want it to be longer, make it longer. There's no strict rules to it. It's whatever works best for you. But when I'm designing within XD, like, I don't do my mood board in XD. Like I just create it elsewhere. I just take screenshots and just bring them in, like just place them all over the place. I mean, this is clean. Like, just saying, like, this is clean. Look, but in reality, like, what I would do is, like, I would have like a separate XD where it's just craziness all over, and then I'll start going in there and circling things. Like that's another thing too. I recommend, like, you do, if you don't, just kind of like go in there and just like circle areas that you're like, wow, this looks great, and you have some notes, leave some notes for yourself on why this works and things like that. But yeah, that's to answer the mood board thing.
All right, sweet. And I think these last two questions will be very straightforward. Both from, and I apologize, I hope I am now phonetically saying your name right, Ikemi. Hopefully that is correct. Two more, these are the last two, and then we're going to let you leave the audience with anything that you would love to today, and then also where we can find you on the internet. By the way, Jaslin's all the social media is down in the link in the description. You're going to want to follow him. So last two questions. How do you organize your resources that you find on the internet? Is it as simple as, it's just like every time you find something, it's like Command or Control D and you save it into a folder? How does it work?
Yeah, I think, like, this is probably a good time to demonstrate, like, to show you, man, that's awesome. Like, see, like My Mind, right? So this little thing right here, like, I just click on it, like, it tells me I already saved it, and this is how I organize. This is my mood board. This is literally my mood board. So I click on the little thing. It's called My Mind, and it could be Pinterest. It could be whatever else. So I was working on a watch recently, doing some, I don't know, just wanted to do some 3D stuff. So doing some watch, which looks great, by the way. I finished it. I'm very proud of it. Not gonna show it though. So yeah, this is my mood board, and I want to be careful because some of these things have, things in them.
As long as you don't say it, we won't look for it, and you won't get in trouble.
Yeah, like, so this is like, so I literally, and then the good thing with this one, I can put, like, I can add my notes, I can add tags to it, like, and then so it makes it super easy, and it does a lot of time too. It does the tag for you automatically. So I love My Mind just for this, and it also save a link to where I find it. So I can go back to the original source and be like, oh, this watch, this is where I find it. Like, so that's how I collect my inspiration. So then when it comes time to, and, this thing even go deeper, like, you can actually have very specific things, like, your typeface, and I would recommend look into it. It's amazing. It's definitely something worth looking into. And
this is way better than folders. I'm switching to this today.
Yeah, no, it's faster because you collect your inspiration in the web, and then you're trying to save them in screenshots and drop them in folder when you could just literally one click and then they go into this place. Like, and then you have everything in there. And of course you can go in and really organize things as needed. I'm not that neat. So just being honest. So yeah, that's how I do. That's how I collect my inspiration.
Man, you have given like the sneaks of the sneaks today. Like, I thought I knew some stuff, but every time, like, this is why I love this, because like I just realized like how silly, and I already know I'm to a very high degree of that. And it just keep getting worse. But Jaslin, my man, I want to say thanks on behalf of everybody here today. This was absolutely amazing, and we would love to know, is there anything that you would love to leave for us at the tail end of our production here?
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid of type, and don't, a lot of people that does typography, like, they can get very technical with it. They they want you to dive into the history and learning who did what and when they did that. Personally, I never find history to be that interesting. I think it's good to know, the difference between a serif and a sans serif and that level, but diving into the subcategories and other things, I don't care for that. So really just don't don't let it scare you, because you're a designer and they are just tools that you are, for you to use, and it's just another tool in the shed. Don't let it scare you, but do treat it with respect, because type is the thing that you use, no matter what you're designing, unless you're designing something that doesn't have any words, but words will probably fill up most of your site. It's probably 80% of your site is going to be filled with words. So if that's the case, then putting a lot of effort into picking the type that's going to display those words then is also important. So don't sleep on it. It's definitely important. And just doing, I don't do anything magical, and I'm not even great at it. I just look at what people that are better than me have been doing. I collect inspiration, and then I have people that I'm I have mentors that don't even know they're my mentors. I mean, it's I'm yeah, you're my mentor now. But no, jokingly, but what I do, it doesn't hurt. I reach out to people. I'm I saw somebody work that I love. I'm man, this dude is doing amazing stuff. Or this lady is doing some amazing stuff. I want to reach out to her or them and just, and ask. And I do that. Yeah. So don't be afraid to ask. And you'll be surprised how often people want to help and want to give back and everything. Because at some point, someone probably did do the same thing for them. So they want to pay it forward. They want to do that. So do reach out to people that you admire the work. Do reach out, and people you'll be surprised, people will be willing to help. So I'll be in Discord later, to answer some more questions if you have any. So I guess it's the last thing I want to say.
Man, you hit us with some fire towards the end. A closed mouth doesn't get fed, guys. Chat with the people that you want and are basically inspired by. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Jaslin, that was excellent. Can't say it any better. Ladies and gentlemen, Jaslin Tantan, thank you so much. As he said, he'll be in Discord, but also follow him on his channels down below. And also, don't forget to hit that survey on your way out, guys. You want more of Jaslin, episodes about the grid, and even more about typography. With that being said, Jaslin, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Don't forget the survey,
man.
Guys.
Yes, survey time. Peace, guys. Peace. Right. We'll see you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, thank you so much for joining us for Jaslin Tantan and the beautiful amazingness of his typography, the simplification of really what you need to focus on when it comes to type. It's inspiration, practice, and space. And that's it. Keep that in mind. Train your eye, train your technical skills, and keep at it. All right, now we have a couple things to talk about. Again, remember that this episode has been proudly sponsored by Adobe XD. If you haven't tried it out, download it for free. And with that being said, we have some challenges to talk about. Last week, we were working with Miss Fergie Ferguson on some amazing things in Bravo app and really just how to design mobile apps. So our challenge last week was to create a future application in Adobe XD, and you guys came up with some very interesting things. There was about 9 submissions. You guys did absolutely excellent, and it was a very, very tough choice. I decided first place, because they just went all out, was Lorena. She did an excellent job with, she must have just known I love shoes. So we just have to, shout out to her. She did some amazing face scanning technology where you get to choose shoes that apparently help you hover. So first place goes to you, Lorena. You're gonna have your first 1 year free of Adobe Creative Cloud. So excellent job. Second place, we came in with Airbus with Hari Krish. Excellent job. Reach your destination using Airbus faster. It's basically using drones or Airbuses to get you where you need to go a little bit faster. The reason I love this was because it was not only simple, but it actually solved a problem, and the design was really well put together. So excellent job there, my friend. Hats off to you. And in third place, coming in, my friend Kyle has been spending a little bit more time in the Game Changers Discord and has put in some work in Adobe XD. And again, why I love this is he kept it simple. He solved a real world problem, which was clean air, which is, we might actually have a problem in the future. I love that some of you guys did a really good job with your concepts or attacked the problem in real life. It was absolutely excellent. So first, second, and third, beautiful work. You guys will be promoted on my social media channels, and I cannot wait to tell you guys what this week's challenge is, based on what we've worked here on today with Jaslin. So this week's challenge is and sorry for blowing up your ears, I didn't realize I didn't turn that down. The best typography for either a mobile or website design. The best typography wins. Submit your work in Discord. So ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. Congratulations again to our first, second, and third place winners. Lorena, I will get to you with your 1 free year of Adobe Creative Cloud in a few moments after the show. Now, with that being said, everybody else remember, next week, again, first place gets 1 free year of Adobe Creative Cloud. So to your heart's content, compete, and do your best work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, again, this production could not have been done without Adobe XD. And for more stuff like this, please fill out that survey, second link down in the description, to keep this production going and learning some amazing things. It helps tremendously. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, I will see you on the next one with our next guest in the next coming week. So with that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, etc. See you on the next one, guys. Creative designers in the world. You want to build your talent, your skills through hard work, and more importantly, surround yourself with a team of individuals who are striving towards greatness with you. And yet you sit there and you ask yourself internally, Brandon, does a place like this exist? And my answer to you would be, of course, motherfucker, that's exactly what we are doing in our Discord. We are the Game Changer. We are a group of designers, artists, creatives that want to take our skill sets, talents, and dreams to the next level. We come together to give feedback on each other's work, give resources, and laugh, a lot of it, and help push each other to be our best selves. If you're interested in becoming the next best you, and quite possibly yourself while chatting with many friends, join your new design family today. See you there.